G'day, you absolute legend. Welcome to the Regen Room. This is a place where we can learn from scientists, CEOs, and First Nations people so that they can share knowledge with us about different regenerative living practices. You'll want to grab a pen and paper because there's going to be heaps of insightful information and you won't want to miss out. We'll see you in there. Welcome to the Regen Room. Today we're talking with Sara Rickards. Sara is an environmental engineer, a regenerative designer, a biomedical scientist, a keynote speaker, and an all-around legend. Thanks for coming on, Sara.
Thanks for having me, Joshy. I'm stoked to be here.
So before we begin, I just want to acknowledge that I'm here on the Sunshine Coast on Gubbi Gubbi land. And I just want to pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and just acknowledge their connection to the lands and the waters.
Beautiful, Joshy, and I'm joining you from a Wabikal country here, so it's nice to be connected up the East Coast songline.
Beautiful. Hey, Sara, first of all, I just wanted to ask you, what does it actually mean to you? What does regeneration actually mean to you?
Regeneration means so many things to me, but I guess starting from a place of sustainability and how I came across regeneration might be a good place to start. And so early on in my career, I was working as, like a sustainability analyst and sustainability manager and things like that. And often, people were not really understanding how holistic sustainability actually is. And, some people might have thought that it was just waste and recycling, and other people would have thought that it was maybe just trees, and some other people might have thought energy. And really it's all of those things and so many more things. And the other piece in that is that often when we're talking about sustainability, and one thing that as a sector we've actually done for quite a while is really grounded it in you're not recycling right, or you're consuming too much, and that's quite negative. And what I love about regeneration is it sort of flips that on its head, and it's like, well, how do you be more regenerative, and how do you be net positive? Because even if we get to a point of being sustainable, we've been so unsustainable for so long that we won't actually have paid back that debt that we've left at the moment we're leaving to the future generations. And so regeneration really puts a positive spin on that, and it's about being that positive and actually bringing more life to the systems that we're a part of as well.
Well, that was summed up perfectly. For me, it's the same. It's just how do we live in alignment with the natural world? I think you've summed that up pretty well. Is there any specific practices or things that you do in your life to actually be a regenerative human being?
I mean, it's a constant learning journey. I definitely don't have it all figured out, but I can share some things that I found really useful in this space. And so, I like a personal, human level. I really like to practice deep listening and feeling into how a place or an interaction or whatever it might be is actually making me feel. So is something making me feel like really contracted and sort of sucking my energy, or is something actually regenerating my energy, making me feel alive and expansive? So that's one thing that I find really useful. And then I guess sort of going further out is, what is the place that I'm in asking to become? How can I be of service to this specific place? Because regeneration is very context specific, which is kind of a bit different to sustainability as well. It's not like a one size fits all solution. So how do we deeply listen and know a place and figure out how we can be part of that ecology, and work towards the restoration and regeneration of place?
Yeah, I know we've had conversations in the past, and it seems to be a recurring thing that comes up. But it's like, how can you, first of all, take care of yourself and regenerate yourself? Because as you've mentioned, we are a part of the natural environment. I mean, indeed, we are the natural environment. So if we're not healthy, then how is our environment going to be healthy? Because we're already causing a detrimental effect to the environment if we're not healthy. So firstly, you take care of yourself, and then, stay curious and think of, how can we then, coming from a generated place, regenerate the area around us. So it's beautiful. And the service thing as well is so important. Like how can we be a worthy ancestor is a question that you've asked me a few times. And now I actually ask myself that question, daily. And even, sometimes at the end of the day, it's like, all right, did I do things today that will make me a worthy ancestor in the future? And am I providing a world that's going to be thriving for the future generations. So yeah, no, beautiful. Another question I've got for you is, what we've got a lot of systems in place at the moment around the world that we're kind of seeing break down a little bit at the moment. And seeing as you're a regenerative designer, and a systems designer, I just wanted to get your opinion on what's happening right now, and then also what are some opportunities for us to create a new future or design a new future together.
What's happening right now? It's a huge question, but what drops in for me is, there's part of it that it's like, this is like the Earth system's immune response to, an unhealthy way of being. And I say that while trying to also hold like deep empathy for the fact that, individuals and communities and families being deeply impacted right now by like this horrific circumstance as well. But it's, overall, it's kind of like this deep slowing down and transformation of our way of being. So, there's a lot of people coming out right now talking about us being in a corona cocoon. And so what are we going to be like once we come out of this cocoon? I don't know if you feel this, Joshy, but it's kind of like there's been moments of it's like almost like you're in paralysis and you're a bit gooey and you're not actually sure where to put your energy. And I think that's normal because we're in this state of actually transforming as individuals and as a collective species, but also as a planet. And so, yeah, just a deep honouring of that transformation and what kind of future do we want to create. So a lot of these big systems that have, been governing our way of being on the world that are very human-centric, like the economy is something that, we're seeing essentially composting itself. And so how do we co-create something much more beautiful with what we're left with from here?
Yeah, there's a couple of things in there that I want to explore a bit further. First of all, the us cocooning, the corona cocoon. I've definitely felt that. An example would be like, when I'm on social media or something, or when I'm communicating with friends or family, or when I'm just walking around and I'm like, there's kind of an urge to burst out into a butterfly, but there's kind of like also a feeling of I'm not ready to project or transform into anything just yet. Like I still feel like and I'm not sure if other people are feeling a similar feeling, but it's kind of like we're just patient. It's taking it back and forcing us to slow down and be patient while the growth occurs, which is really interesting because I've never felt anything like that before that I'm aware of. But yeah, super interesting, the corona cocoon. And then the second thing is, we have built systems around us based, it's an economy we're living in. And I know Damon Gamma, the producer of 2040, recently posed the question, do we want to live in an economy or do we want to live in a society or more of a community? And then, what are the differences between those two things? For me, you've got the economy, which is very like self-centric. It's just, it has one goal, which is, economic growth. And then you've got a community, which is more about supporting humans and individuals and the environment that we're living in. So yeah, there's no real answer there yet either, but it's definitely a question to ponder going forward. What future do we want to create, and what do we want to live in? So what kind of future do you want to create, Sarah? What would you like to what would you like to live in?
Oh, I mean, that's a big question. I think that it would maybe even be irresponsible for me to provide an answer in some ways, because I think, when we talk about the economy and the fact that we've lived in this economy, if you think about, what the economy is measured by, and, GDP, and so that doesn't measure, our relationships, how beautiful our poetry is, and all of these other things that actually provide like the essence and richness to a lot of our lives. And so if I pull that, I guess, into the question that you asked me, I know how I want to feel. I want to feel like blissful and connected, and I want to feel love, and I don't want to feel scarcity and all of that kind of those icky feelings. And I honor those feelings as well, because I think that the whole spectrum of human emotions is important to experience. You can't just be in a blissful state of love and at all times, because that's not sustainable. But how do we set an intention of the future we're trying to create, and then how do we co-create that with other people with enough diversity in the room so it's not just designed by the people that have the most power at the moment. And I think that's the future I would like to be part of creating.
Yeah, what comes up for me there is like is there's a depth in the emotions that we experience, and not trying to avoid any of them, but just trying to maybe have more presence and just to really feel them and acknowledge them and be like, okay, this is this emotion, or this is that emotion, and they're all different, but they're all part of the human experience. And as long as we're not like, there's no point trying to avoid them, because we're not going to, but to be present and to fully feel them, and then go, okay, cool. And then move forward towards whatever you might want to achieve, which maybe it's love or happiness. But, you know, acknowledging the whole spectrum, like you said, and moving forward towards one in particular. Yeah, wow. There's some big questions there. There's a lot to think about already. One thing I wanted to ask you is kind of following on from all that is, what have you been learning from recently to help you, you know, cope through these times?
To help me cope, well, I'm like a total nerd, so I've always got a few books on the go and podcasts, and, you know, talking to my buddies like you. I learned so much from all of those things. But thing that is helping me probably cope the most is just getting my hands in the soil and getting dirty and putting on my overalls and, you know, going and planting more trees in my food forest. And, you know, there's so many lessons in that. And so, you know, understanding the seasons, what is good to plant right now, understanding the seasons in terms of, you know, there is moments of spring and flourishing, but also moments of, you know, winter and rest. And then weeding is the thing that's actually taught me a lot. You know, we never get rid of weeds, and it's almost like our shadow, or the bits about us that maybe we're like, you know, we don't like, we're trying to get rid of or like transform. And, you know, you've got to constantly weed out those thought patterns or whatever, or those behaviors. Otherwise if you leave them for too long, they can get out of control. So yeah, that's what's helping me cope. Dirty overalls, soil under my fingers, and lots of weeding.
Yeah, but to weed, you need to acknowledge the weeds are there, right? You need to acknowledge, okay, that's a weed. I need to spend some time with that and pull it out. And, you know, if you're bringing that back to some of our shadow sides or ways of being, then it's just like, yeah, acknowledge it and then pull it out, or maybe not pull it out, but deal with it and then move on. That's beautiful.
Sure when you do pull it out, like you're not lazy about it. You know, you gently kind of pull it out and pull out all of the roots, and you might still leave some there, and that'll grow back. There's some real tricky weeds. I've had a real problem with onion weed lately, and you know, it's like when you weed that, more grows. And so yeah, there's the diversity in weeds and diversity of lessons that these weeds have been giving me.
Yeah, so there's so much to learn from nature, right? Yeah, it's beautiful.
The biggest one is that we just are nature, of course, which I know that you know, but a re-remembering of that as a collective, I think, would definitely pivot us back into a more beautiful direction.
For sure. And then a final question, Sarah, is what if there was one piece of advice that you could give to humans right now, what would that be?
One piece. Make the most of this cocoon. I can't speak. Corona cocoon. The corona cocoon. And I mean, and you know, acknowledge the grief that you're feeling for the loss of, you know, of humans, and you know, maybe your job, or, you know, the things that, you know, you thought were your life as well, and really slow down, listen deeply to yourself and the natural world around you, and your place, and feel into what that's asking of you to become and to transform into, but at the same time not putting too much pressure on having that happen straight away, because we don't know how long we're going to be here like this in this state. And I think watching anything he's not really useful at this time. You know, we've all been sent to our rooms essentially, and so how do we sort of take that time and deeply reflect and deeply listen, and just be still for a moment, and figure out what it is the world would prefer us to be doing.
Yeah, no, it's beautiful. I've definitely spent a lot more time journaling and reflecting, and yeah, just slowing down to think, okay, what does the world need of me right now? And more often not, the answer to that lately has been nothing. I just really just slow down and stop, and it's okay to do that. Where we've been given an opportunity here to do that. So let's acknowledge that opportunity and then just feel into it a little bit, instead of potentially, you know, just, I know that I've had certain conversations recently. Some might just be waiting for it to be over and to return back to normal. But I think it's important to acknowledge that that's not going to happen. Our normal is not going to come back, I don't think. But that's fine, because there's this beautiful opportunity to create a beautiful future for all of us and for future generations. So yeah, to feel into that and see what that future is going to look like is really, it's actually quite an interesting process to go through, and I'm finding it quite fun.
Mm-hmm. I know, I'm having moments of actually having like a really great time and then feeling really guilty for having such a great time. I don't know if that's coming up for you. And there's definitely been moments of frustration and darkness in all of this as well. It's not all been, you know, rainbows and unicorns and butterflies, that's for sure. But
there has been a lot of rainbows and butterflies up here, though, where I am.
There's so many butterflies at the moment. I feel like everywhere I look, there's just butterflies absolutely everywhere. It's been really
interesting, because we actually do have heaps of butterflies up here. But just before we go into butterfly and rainbow world, I just want to like you said, there has been moments of joy and bliss, but also frustration. And back to what we were talking about earlier, it's okay to feel that range of emotions. So yeah.
Feel all the things, and just looping back to what you said around you know, you feeling like doing nothing. I guess I'd invite you to think about, you know, is nothing also being? Are you just being? You know, nothing kind of can have these negative connotations potentially. You know, doing nothing, being lazy, and that I don't think that you're doing that. I don't think anyone's doing that by doing nothing. I think we're remembering how to be, and so just our being in all of this is a really curious thing. Yeah.
No, that's a beautiful way to wrap up this conversation, Sarah. So thank you so much for coming on, and it's always a pleasure. I really appreciate it. I'll want to pop a couple of links in if anyone watching this has enjoyed hearing Sarah speak. I know that I do every time. She's got a couple of pages where you can follow her. One of those is reunion.earth, where they're doing some amazing stuff. And then also Sarah is a fuck giver, and she gives a lot of fucks, as you can probably tell. So,
thank you so much for having me, Joshy. Keep being you. It's always so beautiful to connect with you. And looking forward to seeing more legends in the Regen room.
Cheers, Ledge.